of Sheila Ignite, Beginner Edition, Winter Edition. So if you missed session 0, that's okay. We just discussed getting a couple things set up, both with Discord, which is going to be our main communication channel for both announcements and communicating with your mentors outside of session time, if you ever have any questions for them. We'll also be using Top Hat for answering quick questions throughout the session. So please sign up for Top Hat if you have not already. Um, so if you haven't joined Top Hat, go to tophat.com, create an account, and join using this code for the Saturday sessions. Um, in fact, I am just going to drop this code in the chat because I will not keep it up here during the presentation. So this is the code we'll use to join Top Hat. And all of our quick questions will be through there. Additionally, if you have not joined Discord, you should be able to check your email for your day of the week and group number. So if you are here today, obviously your day of the week is going to be Saturday, and your group number is going to be whatever number you were given for your mentor group in the email. If you don't know, ask your mentor when we go into breakout rooms. And then on Discord, you will type this command with both your day and group number to set yourself in that group. Let me just drop the link for Discord in the chat as well. There you go. So join that if you have not already. All right. So now that that stuff is out of the way, let's get into what we are actually learning in today's session. We are going to be writing some code with processing in Trinket. We're going to be learning about using the setup and draw functions to draw some simple shapes and text. We are also going to be learning about how to use variables as well as operators to do some math in our program. And we are also going to be learning about the special mouse variables, mouse X and mouse Y, so you can know where your mouse is on screen. All right, let's start with the basics. So in session 0, we also got set up with Trinket. So you should be able to now log in at trinket.io and create a new Trinket with Python. Now, the first thing that we are going to use in all of our code is we are going to be using the processing library. This is going to give us access to a lot of different functions and things that we can use to create drawings and shapes and text. And it's a very wide, expensive library that we're going to use for a lot of things in this course. So first thing you're going to type in this new Python file you've created is from processing import star. And what import star means, that just means import everything. You're going to import everything from processing. Okay, we will also be creating a setup function in our program. This setup function is only going to run once when the program is initially run. So we have this function defined with def setup with 2 brackets and a colon. And then all the code that you want called with setup that is going to run once every time you run your program is going to be put after a single tab here. We're also going to have a similar function called draw, and the draw function is a lot like the setup function, except it executes the code over and over again in a loop until you stop the program. So setup is where you put your code that only runs once. Draw is where you put your code. That will run several times repeatedly as long as the function is running. Okay, and lastly, the run function will go at the end, and it will run both the setup and draw functions, which will visualize your drawings for whatever you've put in both of these functions. So don't forget run, otherwise your program won't do anything at all. Okay, so in session 0, we briefly went over the print function. So the print function looks like this, and it will write whatever we put between the brackets onto the screen. As long as we put some words between double quotes, that will be printed to the output. So as you can see, this was the example we had before. We wanted to print hello world. And if we look at our output here, it'll say hello world when we run our program. You'll also see something here that's some text in green. That's a comment. So anything that you write after a pound symbol is ignored as a comment. So that's very useful for writing things to explain what your program is doing without actually having that text impact anything in the program. It's just for documentation and just for understanding what the program does. Okay, and before we draw anything, we are going to use the size function to define the size of the screen you're working in. So this function will take both width and height to define the dimensions in pixels of the display window you're working in. So if you wanted to make a display window that is 600 pixels wide and 800 tall, this is how you would do that, and you would place that in your setup function. Okay, now we're going to draw a shape. So the first type of shape we're going to learn about with processing is going to be rectangles. So the rectangle, it's a function called rect, and it takes 4 parameters. First 2 parameters are the x and y coordinates of the top left corner. So if you want your top left corner to be at this space on the screen, you define it there. And then next, for the last 2 parameters here, you need to define the width and the height of the rectangle. Okay. Now, so for some of you who have learned about coordinates and the Cartesian plane in math, this is a little bit different because our origin is going to be in the top left corner, not the bottom left corner, as you would expect it to be, maybe. So that means that as you increase your x here, it's going to be increasing width to the right here. And as you increase your height, it's going to increase downwards rather than upwards. So just remember to keep that in mind. Your origin is top left. Okay, now here's another type of shape you can use. This is an ellipse. So ellipse, also known as oval, we can use kind of a similar structure as we did with the rectangle, but this will define the x and y coordinate in the center of the ellipse rather than the corner, because obviously they'd have no corners. We will also define our width and height of the ellipse in much the same way. And if you want to create a circle, that's just an ellipse with same width and height. Okay, now, I hope you've been paying attention because we're going to go over our first quick questions. Are we supposed to take notes on the functions? If you want to, if it will help you remember it. If you don't remember everything, that's okay. You can have the slides to reference as you're writing this code. But for now, if you want to write things down, that's cool. If you don't, you can always look at the slides or ask your mentors about it later. Anyway, on to the first quick question, which is what values of x, y, and d will make a circle defined as ellipse have a radius of 50 pixels and edges that touch the top left corner of the screen. So what would the values of x, y, and d need to be? Okay. Into top hat. My bad. I forgot the beginning of session poll. We are going to do that now. So how were the end of session exercises from last session? Actually, we can skip this. We didn't have any. Okay, now on to our first real quick question. What values of x, y, and d make a circle defined as this ellipse have a radius of 50 and edges that touch the top left corner of the screen, as shown in this image? Okay, I see we have a couple questions. What is the IDE you're using for Python? We're using the website trinket.io, which after this question, we'll post a link for that. And this poll is at Top Hat, which I believe I did link to. I did. Okay, I didn't actually link to it. It's at tophat.com. You can log in and join using the code for Saturday sessions that was sent earlier in the chat and is also at the top left here. All right. Make sure to get your answers in. This time is up now. Okay, let's go over the answers. So those of you who answered D, that is the correct answer, because if we want our ellipse to have a radius of 50, that would mean our diameter here, that would be both our width and height, would need to be defined as 100, so that the radius is half of that. So here, that narrows it down to C and D. And as we went over previously, the x and y coordinates of this ellipse will be the center of the ellipse. And so if we want the edges to touch the corners, we would need to have it defined at two radius lengths in both directions. So that would be 50 in the y direction and 50 in the x direction. So D is the correct answer for that question. If you didn't get that one, don't worry. There will be many more opportunities for quick questions. But for now, we are going to continue with the presentation. All right. All right. So in processing, you can also define your background color using this function. So there are two ways to do this. Either you can put in your RGB values for your specified color. This will be specifying the amount of red, the amount of green, and the amount of blue in a specific color. Or you can just put one value for grayscale, which will be from 0 to 225. Sorry, not 220, 255. So in grayscale, 0 is black, 255 is white. Same with these colors. So 0 would be black, and 255 for any of these would be the most amount you can have of that color. And if you include 255 of all the colors, that will give you white. If you're looking for a specific color, You can look up RGB color pickers online that will help you figure out these values and like select them from a color wheel so you can get the right color that you want. Um, Similarly, we can change the color of shapes that you draw. So there are both selections for fill and selections for stroke. So fill, that will change the color of the inside of the shape, and stroke, that will just change the color of the border. And again, you can use RGB values for this or grayscale values. Okay, looks like we have a question. Is there a website I have to go to? Um, yes. We're If you have not set up Trinket.io, that is the website where we are going to be writing most of the code for these sessions. So I'm just going to drop that in the chat. You can visit that site, set up your account, and get writing some code once we start on the exercises. All right. So some tips to remember for those color functions we mentioned previously. Background will paint the entire window, including the foreground. So if you call background in setup, that will just paint the background one time, but you can also call it in draw. And since that will be called over and over, that will paint the entire window over top of whatever has already been painted in that window. So you can think of it as wiping the entire thing clean and just like painting an entire color over top of it. Fill and stroke, those work a bit differently. So those will apply the color you have defined in those functions to anything you draw afterwards. So you don't need to define it for every individual shape you're drawing. If you want to draw two green rectangles, you only need to call fill or stroke once. So like you can think of it as dipping your paintbrush in a certain color, and then everything you draw after that will be in that color. Okay, so now we're moving on to our first exercise where you can draw the Calgary Tower using some rectangles. So don't worry about getting everything in the exact looks and colors shown here. This is kind of just getting used to using these tools to draw some rectangles and get background set up and kind of work on getting your general coding environment set up. If you haven't done so already or you weren't at session 0, this is the time to do that. Um, so a few hints for this. How do we create the background? So first you should use the setup function to define both the size and color of the background. You can find color combinations to create the color of the sky you want. Again, RGB color pickers exist. You can find those online. And for the tower itself, it is made up of several rectangles of different sizes. And I will let you figure out how big the rectangles need to be and where they need to go on the screen. So with that, do we have the breakout room set up?
Yep, I can open them now.
Great. Okay, anyone who's still here, you have been invited to breakout rooms. So actually, let's see if I can just let me move everyone to breakout rooms.
I think they have to accept it on their end.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope we were all able to draw some rectangles that resemble a tower. And even if you didn't, that's okay. This is a learning experience. Um, so yeah, we are going to continue with session and talk about variables. So what is a variable? A variable is like a type of container. It has a name and you store a value in it. So you need to call it something and you need to give it a value. And that value will always have a type. So there's a couple different types we can give variables. One of the types, integers. So we all know about integers. Those include both positive and negative numbers, but not decimals. So basically just numbers you can count with. There's also something called a float, which is similar, but you can do decimals now. Use it for all your decimal dreams. Okay, we got a question. Can you send me the slides? Go to shulicignite.com. That's where the slides are. Yes, anyway, so yeah, you can pull up those slides, you can follow along. Um, yes, Gabriella, thank you for linking the slides. That's where the slides are. Um, so yes, floats. These include both positive and negative decimal numbers. We also have strings. Strings are used for text. So if you're defining a string of symbols, such as letters or numbers or any other characters you can think of, you're using a string for that. And as long as you put those characters in between some quotes, either single or double quotes, then it will be recognized as a string. All right, so here's an example. So creating a variable, it's just assigning a value to a container. And so whenever you use the name of that variable, it will access that value. So for example here, if you create a variable called height and assign it to the value 10, then anytime you use the variable height anywhere else in your function, it will access the number 10. So if you go print height, it will print 10. Okay, now here's a quick question about variables. What type of value are we assigning to today? Remember, we talked about integers, floats, and strings. Um, Now, which one is this? Okay, we're gonna go back on over to Top Hat. Right, getting another question here, how to join Top Hat. So Top Hat is a website you can join, you can create an account for, um, and there will be an access code for joining this specific classroom for this session, and you need to input that code, this one at the top left there. Okay, a couple more seconds here. Yeah, just a reminder about strings. It can be used for any characters, not just letters. All right, I'm gonna show the answers now. Okay, those of you who answered C, that is the correct answer. So as a reminder, uh, if you put any characters between quotes, that can be single or double quotes, and those characters can be numbers, letters, alphanumerics, any other characters, that will create a string. So if you wanted to create a float here, you would do the same thing without the quotes. All right. So gonna continue with the slides. And actually, we have another exercise to go over. This one will be a bit quicker. So first part, start out by copying this code for two snowmen. You can type it out or just copy paste. It's a useful skill for programming, copying things. But yeah, copy this code. And then what you want to do is move both of the snowmen 50 pixels down and 50 pixels to the right. Um, and then figure out what's the least number of lines you need to change and which snowman is easier to move. So as you can see here, we have one with no variables, one with variables. Okay, so here's going to be our little experiment. You can try and move both snowmen by changing those variables and see which one is faster. All right, we'll give about 5 minutes for this breakout room. So if we can get those open, here we go. Okay, and most people join back in. Okay, welcome back everyone. Hopefully we were all able to try out this little example about variables. What you should have found is first snowman up here. If we want to move this 50 down and 50 to the right, we have to change 6 different numbers in here, which takes way longer than if we were just use variables. Okay, so that should move the one snowman. Now, what if I wanted to use the other one? And there you go, it's moved so much quicker. And that's how variables make it easier to change multiple things that depend on similar parameters. Okay, so last thing we're going to talk about in this session is going to be operators. So operators, not talking about phone operators, we're talking about arithmetic operators. So you can use programs to do math. Most of these, I'm assuming you've seen already if you're in high school and have done math before. So we have the addition operator, subtraction, multiplication, division, and one you might not know. I definitely did not know it when I started programming. This is modulus. It basically is division, but it will give you the remainder of the division. So if you were going 5 modulo 2, that will give you 2 with a remainder of 1. So what this will give you, it will give you 1 as your answer, because that is the remainder of this division. Okay, so we have one more quick question that will use operators. So how can we define the parameters x and y so that a circle defined with this function will stay at the top left corner of the screen for any diameter d? So this will be defining x and y in terms of d so that any circle you draw will be in the top left corner. Okay, let's pull up this question. We do have a bit of time for this question. If you really wanted to, you could try coding this yourself to see if your solution works. Okay, we got 10 more seconds. All right, let's see these responses. Okay, so if you answered B for this question, you are correct. So if we go back on over to the slides, if we have defined D as some variable, we want to define x and y in terms of d so that it will always be in the top left corner no matter what we have d as. That would mean that if we want x and y to be one radius length away from both edges of the screen, then we would need to define x and y with the radius of the circle, which will be half of d, as you can see in this answer. Okay, so that is mostly everything. I will briefly touch on these mouse variables. So processing will give us the variables mouse x and mouse y to access the position of your mouse's x coordinates and y coordinates. You don't need to assign values to these variables. It's a built-in variable. The program will do it automatically, so you don't need to worry about that. So here's an example of a function that will use these variables. So if we wanted to have a rectangle that will always follow your mouse around, you can define its x and y position as mouse x and mouse y. So then its position will always be the same as the mouse position. Okay, so that's all we have on that. Just going to briefly go over again how to share your code. So if we go back over to Trinket, let's say I want to share this. First of all, make sure you save your code, and then you can go share, and you want to get a link. You can copy this link, and then paste it in the submission folder for whichever stream you're in, whether Bugbusters or Pythonic Lava. And those are right here on the website. Okay. So the rest of this session time will be for you to work on your end of session exercises. So we have different exercises for Bugbusters and Pythonic Lava that kind of touch on the concepts we've gone over in this session. So we have one where you can have a square and you can change the color of it using grayscale by moving your mouse position from left to right. And here is having multiple squares that will follow the position of your mouse, basically. So these are kind of examples of what these exercises should look like. They don't need to be exact one-to-one. So if you have like a different size of square or like different colors, that's totally okay. This is just a kind of a blueprint concept for you to work on. Yeah, once again, we can see here exact colors aren't needed. This applies to the Pythonic Lava exercises too. We have one with color changing circles and one with a color changing rectangle, both based on mouse position. We also have a few just for fun exercises. So if you finish those end of session exercises, you can look at these. And here's just some extra instructions for submitting exercises. If you have any more questions on that, you can ask your mentors in breakout rooms. All right, so I'm gonna go into breakout rooms until